song goes, we build this house on hope and flame. And I feel that. Every voice in this room, every heart that keeps showing up, you are the builders of that hope. We are the dream still under construction. But every builder knows before you raise the walls, you read the blueprint. Before you sign the contract, you read the fine print. At least that's what we should be doing. Because the catch, the hidden clause, rarely appears on page 1. It's always down there in the small letters, the part we skip when we're just ready to get on with it. You might know this classic story. A man named Faust once made that mistake. He wanted everything, knowledge, pleasure, success, and he got it. All he had to do was to sign the contract. But down at the bottom it said, when the party's over, baby, your soul belongs to me. And so he lived a large and died empty. That's one of the oldest warning labels in literature. Consider carefully what you're agreeing to. Fast forward to a few centuries later, and in the years leading up to the 2008 housing crash. Some of you remember that. People all over this country were handed mortgage papers an inch thick. First-time buyers, families who had never owned a home before were told, you're approved. Low payments, low interest, just sign here. But buried in that stack were adjustable rates and balloon payments that would explode later. When those teaser rates reset, foreclosures swept across communities and recession rippled across the globe. Now, whether it's an old legend about a man and his soul or a recent history relating to the housing crisis, the pattern is the same. What you don't know about the agreement can still bind you. Not reading the fine print doesn't make it disappear. It just makes the discovery all the more jarring. But here's the thing, most of us still won't do it. Not in business, not in politics, not even in love. We scroll to the bottom of the terms and click, I agree. So how many times have you heard lately, I didn't sign up for that, or I didn't vote for that? Oh, yeah, you did. We take people at their slogans instead of their record. I said we take people at their slogans instead of their record. Yeah. We elect leaders who swear to serve, then watch them trade compassion for convenience. Cut food for the hungry while feeding tax breaks to the rich. We let corporations sell us freedom through 10-page contracts that quietly claim ownership of our data, our labor, and even our time. Look around, people are working 2 jobs and still can't afford rent. SNAP benefits are being slashed while grocery prices are still soaring. Government employees go unpaid while politicians congratulate themselves on who's winning the shutdown. We live in a world that keeps breaking its word and naming the broken pieces as progress. And it's not just a legal problem, it's a moral one. Dr. King once said that America had given black people a bad check, a promissory note that came back marked insufficient funds. But now it's not just black folks. Dr. King called out the gap between what the nation said and what it did, between liberty and justice for all, and who all actually meant. That was covenant language. He wasn't asking the country to make new promises. He was asking it to live up to the ones it had already made. Yeah. You can clap for that. Now, our theme this month, as Marlon said, is covenant. And I know the word covenant sounds ancient, like one of those church words that feels like it should come with a beard and a staff. Thy covenant. Thy covenant. Let's be clear about something. There's a difference between a contract and a covenant. A contract is transactional, while a covenant is relational. Covenant says, I will mean what I say even if you don't. I will stay in this with you because love calls me to. Now, some promises only pretend to be covenant. They wear the shape of faithfulness, but not the heart. Real covenant never exploits. It binds us to what heals and frees. So when we talk about covenant in this church, we're not talking about submission. We're talking about liberation through integrity. Somebody say integrity. Because in a world that treats promises as disposable, integrity becomes an act of resistance. Yeah. When words lose their weight, covenant becomes an act of rebellion. Now, before I come across too self-righteous, let me confess something. Have you ever heard the phrase, black don't crack? It's all about aging. Now, I have a theory about that. Black don't crack because we oil up. We moisturize. You better not walk out of that house ashy. Growing up, they're going to talk about you and your mama. Every auntie, every grandma had the same reminder, baby, you better put some lotion on those knees. But on dark skin, it shows up. So after bathing from the top of my head to my toes, oil. So I'm always on the lookout for some good, thick lotion. So a while back, I brought this new fancy, deep moisturizing lotion, smelled good, felt good, used it every day for a month. But I noticed something. My skin just kept burning and itching. I'm like, what's going on? So I went over and looked at this bottle and I was like, body wash. I had been moisturizing with soap for weeks. Someone said, good thing it didn't rain, Randy. Forget the fine print. I didn't read the label. Yeah, black was certainly cracking then. But it made me wonder, how often do we do that? How often do we keep rubbing something into our lives because it feels familiar or smells good without asking what it's made of? Now, I'm also that guy who tried to build an IKEA desk without reading the instructions. Because come on, how hard can it be? Well, long story short, I had to disassemble it and start all over again. And quit acting like I'm the only one. Most of us have done some version of that. We clicked, I agree, on a screen without reading a single line. Most of us have signed up for something we didn't fully understand. A job that drained us. A relationship that controlled us. A church that promised grace but practiced shame. a culture that sells comfort at the cost of conscience. When we don't read what we are agreeing to, we end up being complicit in our own disappointment. We end up like me with that bottle of lotion, doing something that looks right but burns when it touches real skin or a real heart. But what happens when we flip the script, when someone actually does read what everyone else ignores? In 2019, a high school teacher in Georgia named Danila Andrews bought a travel insurance policy for her retirement trip. She taught consumer economics, the kind of class where you learn to read the fine print. And so she did, and page by page she read, and she found on page 7, there was a secret contest line that said, if you are reading this and are the first person to email us, you win $10,000. $10,000 for a teacher. That's a fortune, folks. She sent the email. 23 hours later, the company called. She was the only one who had spotted it. 65 other people had bought the same policy before her, but none had bothered to look. They gave her the money. She used part of it for a trip and donated the rest to literacy programs at her school. Yeah. She proved that paying attention and diligence still matter. She didn't just teach integrity, she practiced it. That's covenant in action. Doing what you know to do even when nobody's checking. I bet all of y'all gonna start reading the fine print now. But not every story ends like Mrs. Andrews. She had the time and the training. Many of us don't. Sometimes the fine print is built to deceive us, written so small and tangled, we never stand a chance. We just dive in, trading long-term values for short-term gain, accepting jobs that pay well but drain our lives, joining families that treat people as replaceable, saying yes to comfort or status if it means shutting up and keeping quiet. That's a modern Faustian bargain. You get what you think you want and only later discover what it actually cost you. There are contracts like that need to be broken. If the label says gentle, but it's full of acid, the holiest thing we can do is to stop using it. Walk away, name it for what it is. Leaving a harmful bond, a toxic relationship, an abusive church, an unjust system can be an act of profound faithfulness. Faithfulness to the deeper promise of your dignity and your values. Today we live in a culture that rewards shortcuts, where I've tried counts as success and I meant well excuses harm. We crave connection but fear the cost. We want belonging without the binding, justice without disruption, community without commitment. But my friends, integrity isn't intention, it's alignment. When our words, actions, and values all point the same way. When you keep your promise, not because someone's watching, but because it's who you are. Integrity is the physics of the soul. What holds a life in shape, because without it, everything collapses. Doesn't matter if it's a relationship or a nation. Covenant says, keep your word when it's hard. Stay, show up anyway. Our first UU principle meets us here. Every life has worth. Every soul has its dignity. Not achieved, but given. Holding us steady even when promises fall apart. And when we fail, and we will, what then? Covenant isn't about perfection. It's about returning and beginning again. Repair begins when we stop hiding the damage, name what was lost, and try again with honesty. That's not shame whispering, "You're broken, my friend. You're not enough. Oh, God's keeping score." No. Covenant says louder, "You failed, and you're still worthy of another chance." We all are. A promise isn't trustworthy because it never cracked, but because we cared enough to mend it with honesty. Like the psalmist prayed, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me." Covenant calls us not to perfection, but to renewal, to begin again. When I think about examples of integrity, I don't have to look all that far. I think about Nancy McDonald, an educator whose courage still echoes through this congregation. She fought for equality in Tulsa schools when it was neither safe nor popular to do so. She led with principle and love. And to this day, the Library of Congress now holds her story as part of America's memory. Yeah. Think about Dave Crow, who passed away just this week. He showed up in this space countless times to serve as an usher. Now, he was much more than that throughout the years, but here recently he served as an usher on the Memorial Guild, and he showed up in this place on countless memorials, serving while fighting cancer himself. He was literally keeping covenant while dying, showing us that service doesn't retire just because the body does. That's one hell of a legacy, my friends. I think of George Crumey, who every year made sure students who couldn't afford winter clothes had warm hoodies. For some of those kids, it was the only warm thing they owned. That's covenant stitched into fabric, my friends. And there are so many other examples. Every week we stand here and say together, love is the spirit of this church. And I won't have you repeat it for a third time. But you know it, right? But it's not just a beautiful poem. It's a covenantal agreement we renew every week with each other and with the better angels of our own natures. When we say love is the spirit of this church, we're not describing how we feel. We're declaring how we'll act. The fine print there says, love is patience, and you know it's patient when you want to snap on somebody. But the fine print goes on and says, love is curiosity when you'd rather judge. Love is kind when you rather be angry. When we say service is its law, we're recognizing that love without action is just window dressing. Service is love translated into motion. We don't get to clock out on compassion, my friends. I'll repeat that. We don't get to clock out on compassion. We serve even when it's inconvenient, even when others don't deserve it, or we feel they don't. And when we say to dwell together in peace, we're promising not to run when it gets messy. Peace doesn't mean we all agree. It means we keep the table open anyway. Peace means we repair instead of retreat. And when we say to seek the truth in love, we're pledging to pursue what's real, because we know that truth without love becomes a weapon, and love without truth just becomes a talking stick. And we are called to seek truth, my friends, not to own it, and to do that seeking in love. Always seeking in love. And when we say to help one another, we're promising that no one falls through the cracks alone. My friends, that's not charity, that's solidarity. It's the recognition that your flourishing and my flourishing are all bound up together. It says, I will try to see you as more than your worst moment, and you will not weaponize my vulnerability against me. And it says, I will tell the truth without deliberately trying to harm you. And when we say that this is our great covenant, we're not describing perfection. We're describing persistence. We're saying we will keep trying even when we fail, because love, my friends, is worth the labor. Now, taken all together, the covenant is the fine print of what it means to be all souls. Now, if that didn't deserve a clap, I don't know what happened. Let me back up and repeat it again. I said, taken all together, this covenant is the fine print of what it means to be all souls. Every time we say it, we are naming who we are aspiring to be. It stops just being liturgy. It starts becoming a way of life. In a culture of betrayal, keeping our word is a radical act. I want to tell you that. When politicians lie without shame, when companies market deceit as innovation, when public trust is a punchline, integrity becomes revolutionary. Every honest word you speak is an act of protest. Every kept promise is a quiet revolution. Every time we show up again after disappointment, we are waging peace against the chaos of our age. So blessed are the peacemakers. Again, I say, when words lose their weight, covenant becomes rebellion, sacred rebellion. Because covenant says, live true, stay steady, show up. So what does it look like in practice, my friends? It looks like refusing cynicism, helping the neighbor whose name you do not know, or it looks like standing with others to demand change. It looks like giving your time to something that doesn't give you anything back, but perhaps purpose. It means speaking truth with kindness and keeping your word with courage, because faith calls us to rebuild what we didn't break and keep loving what the world keeps wounding. That is our call today. So before you lather up your next promise, read the label. Ask what it's made of. Ask what it costs. Ask if it heals or harms. And when you find a promise worth keeping, pour yourself into it. Keep it so faithfully that others can read your integrity in your actions. My friends, maybe covenant isn't carved in stone. Maybe it's written on our hearts. And maybe faith, real faith, isn't about believing everything in the book. Maybe it's about this: reading the fine print of love and rising up together to live it again and again and again and again. Amen and blessed be.
With Spirit to guide us, rise in hope, in prayer. We find ourselves here in hope, in prayer. We're right here.